to this week's video. For my regular viewers, you will know that I've recently bought myself an EVH Wolfgang guitar. So I'm going to start the video with a track of me playing this through a Marshall. Well, I hope you enjoyed that track. Now, I'm going to explain my thinking behind it. Now, for those of you who've been watching my channel recently, you'll know that I've bought myself an EVH Wolfgang guitar. It's a bit of a departure from my usual thing. I mean, a Strat and a 335, they're a much lower gain sound. But I was really into Van Halen when I was younger. I never really tried to play like him because I thought I couldn't because it was too difficult. Now, this photo just shows how long I've been a Van Halen fan. There's me and my friend Matt, and he'd asked the record store guy if we could have the sign from the For Unlawful Carnal Knowledge display that the record shop was displaying. Just goes to show what a big band Van Halen were at the time, that even a small record shop in a small town in the UK had this big sign in it. So that was released in 1991, so that goes to show that's, what's that, 32 years at least. And over the last few weeks I've been doing some videos and I've been using various different things. I used this in last week's video, this SL drive, a Marshall in a box. I've been using guitar rig to get some Marshall-y sounds. And then I suddenly thought to myself, hang on a minute, I've got a Marshall, and there it is. That was my first proper amp I bought. Now, I can't remember, I know I've got the receipt for it somewhere and I can't find it, but I bought it probably, it's either 87, 88 or not 89. I bought it brand new at a shop called Rock Bottom in Croydon in London, in England. It was my first proper valve amp. I did have a couple of amps before it. I had a little PV Prax amp was my very first amp, a little transistor one. Then I had a PV Bandit, that was my first full-size amp, and that was a transistor amp as well. And then I saved up and I got myself one of these, and I can't remember exactly how much it cost. I wish I could. I think it was 250 quid. And I also had, well, I still have got the matching speaker cabinet that goes underneath it, which I bought afterwards. So I've had a little dig around in some photos, which is where I found that photo of me with Matt, and I've located some pictures of me playing with the amp. Now this one was me at school, so I'm guessing this was about 1991, and my dad is on lead vocals. Our lead singer, called Matthew, had left to go back to Spain, so we didn't have a singer anymore, so I got my dad in to stand in his place. Here's a photo of me using it stacked up on my first summer season. This is a photo of me using it with a band in a pub. I think I might have still been at school, I'd have just left. And here's one a little bit later on a function using it. So here's my white Strat leaning against my Marshall. I love that photo that people show of what kids these days think it was like growing up in the 80s, and then the photo of what it was actually like growing up in the 80s. And I think this carpet, I think this carpet shows a more realistic depiction of growing up in the 80s rather than these 80s Rubik's Cube laden rooms with all bright colours and everything that kids think these days it looked like in 1985. This was my main amp for a long time. I did then buy a little Gallien-Kruger 250ml, which I've also still got, and then the keyboard player in the band suggested why didn't I up my credit card limit and buy a Fender Blues DeVille, which is what I did the first time I'd ever bought something before I had the money for it. So anyway, that was my main amp for a long time. So now I thought I'm going to try this guitar through that amp. I haven't used this amp for a long time because I prefer the Fendery sound. It's got too much gain really for a lot of the stuff I do. But I plug this into it and it sounds fantastic. What I'm going to do now is I'm going to set a camera up in front of the amp, my GoPro, because it sounds really good, so you can hear the sound of it from the GoPro and you can see the settings I've got. So I think that will show it off better than the mic that I've got on this camera. So let me get that set up. Right, I've got it set up. I've got my GoPro pointing at the amp, so hopefully you can see the dials on it. Difficult to tell from this angle, but I think you can. The microphone on this camera, well, it's a nice shotgun mic, doesn't work as well. The GoPro's brilliant at picking up loud sounds. So right, I'm going to start off. I've got my earplugs in because that's pointing right at my ear and it's going to be loud in here. Can't be too long because I'll annoy the neighbours. Right, it's got a clean channel on this. This was the master volume, sorry, the split channel reverb version as opposed to the master volume. 1x12, 50 watt. So this is the clean channel. You can hear it's got the reverb on it. Let me just turn the reverb off a sec so you can hear the difference. With the reverb. And as you can hear, even with the volume only on about 3, it's still breaking up quite a bit. This is very high gain pickups on this guitar. Sorry, high output pickups. But if I back it off, let's turn the master up. Turn that down a bit more, see if I can get it even cleaner. So that's with the EQ pretty flat. That's the clean channel. Right, let's move on to dirty channel. So the way I remember I used to set it, I used to have the volume on the second channel up full, and then I just had the gain back down a bit. Before I ever had overdrive or any pedals, I just used to use the amp, so I'd have the clean channel for rhythm and then click in the other channel. So let's put everything flat. I'm going to back the master down a bit to start with. Let's change channels. So there's already quite a lot of gain there, but I'm only on 4 on the preamp gain. That's quite a lot of preamp gain there rather than power amp distortion, because I can't really wind it. I'm going to wind it up a bit more. That's still quite a medium gainy sound actually. That's not as gainy as some of the like the Van Halen presets I've got on some of my other stuff. So let me wind up the preamp gain a bit more. Let me put it on about 7. It's still not as much gain as I thought there'd be. I'm going to whack it up now onto full. Let's see what that sounds like. Noisy. Oh. I've had to turn it off because it was too loud. That's interesting that. I've not used that for a long time because I've not been going for that sound, but even on the lower gain sounds it still sounds great. Probably less versatile than my Fender style amps, but I'm trying to work out how many amps I've bought since I had that one. Now if I go back to using that, that's a long journey away from it. I've had a Gallion Kruger, I had a Rivera TBR1, I had a 70s Silverface Deluxe Reverb, I had a Fender 4x12 Tweed Blues DeVille. I've got my Vibra King, I've got a Vibra Verb, I've got a Carr Vincent, I've got my Milkman amp. All of those amps, they're all totally different to that, but that does sound great, particularly on full volume. Well, I hope you enjoyed that video. Little run through of my brand new guitar with my first 35-year-old amplifier. Thank you very much for watching. I'm bringing out new videos 7 PM every Friday UK time. So hope to see you next week.